Hello, I am Bjorn, and welcome back to Bjorn Does Movies. As you can see, we're back at the raft in the MCU, which means we're doing the first act of Thunderbolts. I'm not going to hold you guys up too much. I do want to mention one thing. While I was writing the script, I decided to make a change, and I did remove a certain character. That character is, of course, Vulture. I know some people have mentioned wanting to remove Vulture in the comments. That's not why I did it. He was actually a holdover from a subplot that I wound up cutting. When I'm done with this series, I'll discuss what I cut and why, but I'm just letting everyone know that Vulture is no longer in this movie, and that there's a very specific reason for that, which I'll get into later. Doesn't matter. I can change what I want. You can't stop me. Alright, let's get right into it. We open on a teen sitting in a dirty prison cell alone. He looks down at his hands. Dark circles ring his eyes. A prison guard enters the room and taps on the bars of the cell. "James Sanders, you've got a visitor," he says. James looks up at the man and stands. We follow him as he gets walked into a visiting room. He sits at a table and is handcuffed to his chair. A man enters and takes a seat across from him. He's wearing a nice suit and a mask that covers his face entirely. A butterfly is printed across it. The man says, "Hello." His voice is electronic, clearly being run through some sort of filter. James looks up and sighs. "What do you want?" The masked man says, "That depends. Do you regret it?" James asks, "Regret what?" The masked man says, "What you did." James stops and thinks for a second. No, I don't," he answers. The masked man nods. He turns to the prison guard. "I'll be taking this one. Uncuff him." James looks confused as the prison guard removes his handcuffs. He's able to stand up. He stares at the masked man, who gestures for James to follow. James says, "This is some kind of trick." And the masked man says, "No trick. Just an opportunity." James follows him. They walk out of the prison, and a nice car pulls up. The masked man and James enter, and they start to drive. James says, "You got them to let me go. Who are you?" The masked man says, "They call me the Power Broker." James says, "You're the Power Broker?" And the Power Broker replies, "You've heard of me. I'm flattered." James replies, "Of course I've heard of you. What do you want with me?" The Power Broker says, "I read your police report. You protected your mother and your sister from your own father. I find that admirable. It's the sort of thing I need. A protector." Their car pulls up to a skyscraper. The Power Broker says, "This is me." He steps out of the vehicle. James nervously follows him. They enter an elevator. James says, "How am I supposed to protect somebody like you?" The Power Broker says, "You know who I am, so clearly you haven't been paying attention." The elevator opens, and we see a laboratory. They walk past chemistry sets and scientists working in white lab coats. Lastly, we see them pass by a giant glass tank filled with a strange, slightly blue liquid. Floating in it is the body of Quicksilver from Age of Ultron. You know, the one with all the bullet holes riddling it up and down. We've seen it a couple times. The Power Broker gestures for James to sit in an operating chair. He says, "I don't know what you've heard about me, but I'm not a bad person. I'm not good either. I'm a businessman, somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to offer you a deal. I'll give you power, unlike anything you've ever imagined. In exchange, I want your service. You will work for me. What do you say?" James thinks about it for a second. We see him mulling it over. He says, "Can you provide money for my family? Just enough for them to eat and live?" The Power Broker kind of laughs and says, "Of course. As long as you work for me, they will be more than well off." James nods and says, "Then I'll do it." The Power Broker says, "I'm glad to hear it," and then he leaves the room. The scientists strap James to the chair. He looks around nervously. One of the scientists approaches him with a needle. It's filled with a blue serum. They inject him. He begins to flail and shake. He begins to choke and cough. He tries to scream, but it's muffled by gargling. His eyes turn blue as they open wide. The whole world seems to go in slow motion. His eyes move from side to side at normal speed as the world continues in slow motion. We cut away from him back to the Power Broker. He's sitting in a waiting room. One of the scientists walks in. He says, "And what are the results?" The scientist says, "This one survived. It appears Formula 83C is a success." The Power Broker says, "And the boy?" The scientist says, "Exhibiting the same powers as the original. To what extent we won't be sure until we conduct some testing." The Power Broker nods and says, "That's wonderful news. Our little investment paid off. We are going to make a lot of money." We're going to cut to the Marvel logos.
And then we'll see 6 years later. We open on a bank filled with people. The camera highlights a few security guards. Suddenly, the front of the bank explodes as a man runs through it. It's Bulldozer, a member of the wrecking crew. Apparently we saw these guys in She-Hulk. Again, I did not watch that, but sure. We'll just go with that. I'm going to make them look like the comic book versions, though, so if that's not what they look like in She-Hulk, I literally couldn't make myself watch She-Hulk. I tried. 3 more men quickly follow him in. We see Pile Driver, then Thunderball with his big wrecking ball dragging behind him. Finally, we see Wrecker with his crowbar in hand. Wrecker yells, "Everybody get on the floor! This is a robbery." The security guards start to shoot at Pile Driver. The bullets bounce off him harmlessly and fall to the floor. He smiles. He punches one of the guards, sending them flying into a wall. Bulldozer knocks another one out a window with a charge. Wrecker says, "Anyone else want to try shit? Please do. I promise Pile Driver enjoys this." Pile Driver says, "It's true. I really do." The last guard sets his gun on the floor. Wrecker says, "Good boy." He points to the teller. "My friend Thunderball here is going to walk over and hand you a bag. You're going to fill it up with money. No funny business. You don't want to make him angry. I've seen what a human body looks like after getting hit by that little wrecking ball of his. Like a pancake." The cashier nods. Thunderball starts to walk over to the counter and hands him the bag. The man starts to fill it with money from behind the counter. We hear a voice from behind them. "You know, my mother always said it was rude to rob a bank." The bank robbers spin and we see U.S. Agent standing in the shattered entrance to the bank. He tightens his shield on his arm and cracks his neck. Wrecker steps forward. He brandishes his crowbar. "What are you supposed to be? Captain America's kid cousin?" U.S. Agent says, "I wish. Never got to meet him." "No, you can call me U.S. Agent." He says it all triumphantly and heroically. He turns to the civilians who are on the floor. "Don't worry, folks. We will have you out of here in no time." Wrecker says, "We." Suddenly, Ghost faces through a wall next to Pile Driver. She hits him hard with a fist, but Pile Driver just laughs. "I'm bulletproof. Your punches mean nothing," he says. Ghost phases a fist through his shoulder, and his arm falls limp. He tries to move it but can't. He says, "What the hell did you do to me?" Ghost just says, "I punched you." This time, Pile Driver throws a punch. Ghost just stands there. His punch is stopped as a barrier suddenly appears around Ghost. As his fist is stopped by the barrier, we can see a tattoo of a butterfly on it. Pile Driver looks past Ghost and we see Songbird for the first time. She smiles. "What do you think of my barriers?" she says. "I think they pack a real punch." Suddenly a fist made out of energy appears from the barrier and slams into Pile Driver. He's thrown against the back of the wall and falls limp on impact. Wrecker tries to attack U.S. Agent. He swings his crowbar down hard and U.S. Agent catches it with his shield. A loud metal ringing comes from the shield. The crowbar digs a giant divot through the shield, so we can clearly see it's not vibranium. U.S. Agent hits him with a kick and sends him flying. The crowbar remains stuck in the shield. Thunderball tries to swing his wrecking ball towards U.S. Agent. As he does, a piece of rebarb sticks into one of the chain links, into the floor. We see Bullseye. He throws 4 more pieces, each land perfectly in chain links, then stick into the floor, pinning the wrecking ball to the ground. Thunderbolt pulls tight against the wrecking ball. He struggles against the pins in the ground, then pulls it free. This time he decides to throw the wrecking ball right towards Bullseye. Just as it's about to hit, another barrier appears around Bullseye, catching the wrecking ball. We see Songbird again. She says, "I've got to hand it to you. This thing must be hard to lift." A hand appears from the barrier and grabs a hold of the wrecking ball. Bullseye rolls out from underneath the barrier and throws 3 more knives, each sink into Thunderball's arms. Thunderball drops the wrecking ball and turns towards the counter of the bank. He grabs the bag of money sitting there. He tries to run for the exit, but a foot catches the bag. Thunderball looks up and we see Citizen V. He looks just like his classic comic book counterpart. Citizen V kicks Thunderball in the face, sending the brute backwards. Thunderball stands up and charges at Citizen V, but Citizen V draws a sword and dodges the charge. He leaves scratches across Thunderball's body with the sword. Thunderball lets out a howl of anger and tries to smash Citizen V with his fists, but Citizen V dodges him and then cuts the back of his leg, sending the giant to the ground. Citizen V finishes him with a kick to the back of the head, knocking him unconscious. We see Bulldozer is fighting Ghost. She dodges his attacks and slices him with her own sword, but he's tough. He manages to land a hit on her, catching her out of phase. She flies forward and rolls onto the ground. U.S. Agent sees and throws his shield with all of his force. He's a superhuman. When it nails Bulldozer, it leaves an impact. It lays him out. U.S. Agent shakes his head. "I'm thinking you guys aren't cut out for bank robbery. I know a couple restaurants that are hiring. Or maybe you guys are more cut out for construction." We see Wrecker grab a gun off one of the guards from earlier. He holds it to a woman's head. He says, "Stop what you're doing. I'm walking out of here or she loses her head." Bullseye rolls his eyes and tosses a knife. It bounces off a floor, then off a sign, before sticking itself right into the hand holding the gun. Wrecker drops it and lets out a scream. U.S. agent says, "Nice throw, Bullseye." He walks over to Wrecker. "Wrecking crew, huh? I'm not seeing a whole lot of wrecking. You may want to change your name." He punches him and knocks him unconscious. U.S. agent says, "We're done here." The people in the bank clap and cheer as the heroes leave. The camera lingers on Wrecker's hand. We can see a tattoo of a butterfly on his hand as well. We're going to cut to an alleyway sometime later. We see the Thunderbolts standing around. U.S. agent says, "I think we're clear. Time to be civilians again." He removes his mask, revealing John Walker from Falcon the Winter Soldier. No surprise here, we knew that was coming. Next we see Bullseye take off his mask, revealing Poindexter from the Daredevil show. Ghost removes her mask, although we already probably recognize her suit. Songbird takes off her mask, and it's just a normal woman. Lastly, Citizen V removes his mask, revealing Zemo. Songbird says, "Were the puns too much? I'm worried I overplayed it." John Walker says, "No, I think it was perfect. Just cheesy enough. Despite my terrible lines, I think they bought it. Smart thinking with the knife, Bullseye." Bullseye says, "Thank you." Zemo says, "Did you notice the hands?" And John Walker says, "You mean the tattoos?" And Zemo says, "Yes." John Walker says, "I did. They all had them. We'll look into it later. For now, good job. I think they really bought us as heroes. Congratulations. Soon you'll all be free men." This is my attempt to sort of do the bit where you don't know they're supervillains. It's kind of impossible, so I don't even really try. I just use it for a fun little introduction scene. We're going to cut to the raft. We see a helicopter land at the raft. A man in a nice suit exits. We see Thunderbolt Ross approach him and shake his hand on the runway. I'm going to call this guy Secretary of Defense guy. I don't want to name him, but he's just a Secretary of Defense guy. You know, standard military corpo type. He says, "Thunderbolt Ross, I hope you had a good reason to drag me all the way out here." Ross says, "I promise it's good. We've got something to show you. A new spin on that project I tried to pitch you a few years ago." Secretary of Defense guy says, "Oh, that again. Look, Ross, I've told you before. The U.S. government doesn't want a team of villains running around. I won't be able to pitch it to anyone." Ross says, "You haven't heard the pitch yet. How could you know?" And the Secretary of Defense guy says, "I don't need to, Ross. We can't have criminals running wild in the streets." Suddenly, Dallas Riordan meets the two in the hall. She's carrying an iPad. She says, "Who says they're criminals? We rebrand them, give them secret identities. The world doesn't even have to know they're convicts. As far as anyone's concerned, they're just the new team of superheroes on the block." Secretary of Defense guy nods as if thinking it over. "Now that's an interesting idea. Who might you be?" Ross says, "She's Dallas Riordan, my assistant." Secretary of Defense guy nods and says, "All right, Ross, let's get this over with. Who are these criminals you have in mind?" Ross says, "I'll show you." Dallas hands the man an iPad. Ross says, "For the leader, we've tapped John Walker." Secretary of Defense guy says, "The new Captain America?" Ross says, "The very same. He's military and loyal to the United States. He's also not really a criminal, so it should help to rein in the others." Dallas says, "He's also good for PR. Once we restore his image a little, the guy can be a Boy Scout again. People love soldiers." Ross says, "Which is why we also picked Benjamin Poindexter, ex-Army Ranger. He was an FBI agent as well before he went off the straight and narrow. After that, he worked as an enforcer for Kingpin. He's proficient with nearly every ranged weapon on the planet and is aimed better than any man I've ever seen." Secretary of Defense guy says, "I'm not saying much super about these heroes. Just military men." Ross says, "Then how about Melissa Gold? Or, as she's more commonly known, Screaming Mimi. She's a superhuman with the ability to control and amplify light and sound waves. She robbed a series of banks with an accomplice before upgrading to murder. She killed 7 people in a robbery gone wrong. Scrambled their brains with just the raw power of her voice." Secretary of Defense guy says, "Jesus, are you sure about this one?" Dallas chimes in and says, "We wanted a good mix of men and women on the team. It helps with public image. She's one of the better options, not to mention she's got a superpower, which is why we picked Ava Starr. She used to do assassination work for the CIA before being picked up by police in California for kidnapping. She's got the ability to phase through physical objects, not to mention she's ruthlessly deadly in combat." Secretary of Defense guy says, "I'm familiar. She did good work back in the day." Ross says, "She did. Our last candidate is Helmut Zemo. I'm pitching him as the brains behind the operation, though he does have some skill in combat." Secretary of Defense says, "I still don't understand how you make them superheroes." Dallas says, "I can explain that. We give them silly names. For example, we make Poindexter here the Bullseye. Melissa becomes Songbird. Zemo is Citizen V. Ava is the Ghost. It's all pretty straightforward. After that, all we have to do is give them some flashy costumes. No one's going to even notice that Melissa Gold, the murdering bank robber, is actually the superhero saving her cat. Secretary of Defense guy says, so what's in this for us? Are we just going to fund this out of the goodness of our heart? Ross says, hell no. You and the United States government will make a deal with them. As long as they act as heroes and do good in public eye, they're free. And when the time comes, they'll help us with our needs. Think of it as a team of superheroes entirely under U.S. government control, with built-in plausible deniability of them being public supers with nothing to connect them to us. It's the Department of Defense's wet dream. That I know you can pitch. Secretary of Defense guy says, alright Ross, you're selling me. I think we can make this work. I need a trial run. Prove to me they can be heroes. Let them take down some criminals. I don't care who. Just make it public. If they put on a good show, I can make the Defense Department bite. Ross says, it's already happened. I let them loose this morning. Secretary of Defense says, you sly dog, Ross. You're playing a dangerous game. Ross says, I always do. He flips on a TV in the conference room, and we see the team of villains being interviewed by a reporter. The reporter says, well, we certainly are excited to be here with the new superhero team. We just watched them defeat a team of villains. But what the world would really like to know is what we should call you guys. U.S. agent walks up and answers her question. He says, we came here to save people, to deliver justice like lightning wherever it's needed. You can call us the Thunderbolts. And we'll do the title drop here. We're going to see U.S. agent running in a nice neighborhood. His phone rings and he picks up a call. It's Thunderbolt Ross. U.S. agent says, Ross, any word on our mysterious criminals? Ross says, that's why I'm calling. I looked into that symbol you mentioned, the butterfly on the hand. It belongs to someone called the Power Broker. U.S. agent says, I know them. Heads up an operation out of Madripoor. They say the Power Broker basically runs the whole city. Ross says, what happens in Madripoor is Madripoor's business. It becomes my concern when superpowered beings created by this Power Broker breach American soil. Luckily for us, it seems that the Thunderbolts and the U.S. government have a mission that aligns. U.S. agent says, you want us to deploy to Madripoor? Ross says, that's correct. I want you to capture the Power Broker and expedite him to the United States. Any assets used in the creation of superhumans should be recovered for research here. As you say, when are we shipping out? U.S. agent asks. Ross says, 2 days. I'll handle your team. They'll be ready to go. Just get your own affairs in order. John Walker hangs up the phone and runs back towards his house. He walks in through the front door, and we see his wife in the kitchen. She's like chopping carrots or something. I don't know, something stereotypical. She says, how was your run? John Walker says, it was good. I got the call. His wife says, how long? And John says, 2 days. Madripoor. I don't know when I'll come home. Olivia says, what are you doing there? John Walker says, taking down a guy called the Power Broker. He's selling superpowers to villains. Olivia says, sounds like a tall order, even for someone like you. John Walker says, I know. I'm not sure if even I'm good enough for this. John Walker says, I know. I'm just not sure if I'm good enough for this. I let myself go too far in Latvia. I let myself get consumed by my darkness. Even in this last fight, I could feel the pull to prevent them from doing any more harm. Just in their lives right there like I did in Latvia. I know it's wrong, but it's just so hard to fight it. His wife says, you have to. You got a second chance, John. I know you can be great. You can show them what a hero is like. Just don't lose yourself. Be a hero your son can look up to. John nods. He says, do you think Henry will understand? His wife says, he will one day. It's just been hard on him. He worries. So do I. John nods and says, I'll talk to him. Let him know there's nothing to be afraid of. His dad's a superhero after all. We see him walk into his son's room. He's got a poster of Captain America on his wall. His eyes are red and puffy from crying. John Walker says, hey kiddo, how you doing? Henry, his son, says, you're leaving again, aren't you? John Walker says, you heard. Henry nods. John says, I am. I'm going overseas. His son asks when he'll come back. And John Walker says, when I can. When the world is safe for kids like you. Henry says, I wish you didn't have to go. And John says, me too. We're going to cut to the raft. We see U.S. agent on the helipad. There's a quindrant landed. Thunderbolt Ross and Dallas approach him. John Walker says, Dallas reordain. I never thought I'd find you here. And Dallas says, hello, John. It's been a minute. He asks, what are you doing here? And Ross says, she's my number 2. She'll be joining you in Madripoor. John Walker says, really? I'll be lucky to have you. I've seen what she can do up close and personal. Ross says, here, this is for you, Walker. Call it a gift. Ross hands U.S. Agent a shield. It's designed like Captain America's, but with a darker paint job. U.S. Agent feels it and swings it a few times. He looks up and says, "This is vibranium. Where did you get this?" Ross says, "I pulled a few strings, called in some favors. This mission has to go well. I have a lot riding on the Thunderbolts." U.S. Agent says, "I won't let you down. I don't think the team will either. I have some level of faith in them." Ross says, "Be careful not to have too much. They're just criminals at the end of the day. They'll stab you in the back for even the glint of freedom." U.S. Agent nods. He and Dallas board the Quinjet. It takes off, and we see the entire group of Thunderbolts sitting on the plane. Songbird is gripping her chair tightly and shaking. She says, "I've never really flown before. Truth is, I'm terrified of heights." U.S. Agent says, "You get used to it." Zemo kind of chuckles to himself and smiles. He says, "That's a bit funny." And Songbird says, "What?" And Zemo says, "They call you Songbird, but you are afraid to fly. It's ironic." Songbird says, "I didn't pick the name." Zemo says, "It doesn't matter. Yours is better than mine. Citizen V. What does that even mean?" Bullseye says, "I like mine. It's accurate because I always hit the bullseye. Watch." He flicks a peanut. This is a reference to the terrible Daredevil movie where he flicks a peanut at someone on an airplane. I just had them on an airplane and couldn't avoid this. He flicks a peanut and it lands off the side of the airplane and then heads right into Ghost. It passes right through her as she phases. She turns and looks over at them. She stares daggers at Bullseye. He just shrugs and tries to change the subject. He says, "I'm not so big on this whole hero thing though. Seems like a bunch of bullshit to me. I've got things I need to do, and they don't involve playing goody two-shoes." Dallas says, "Play the part or go back to prison. It's your choice." Bullseye says, "Fine, but if we have to keep up this charade, how about we take down Wilson Fisk? He's a criminal, and we're superheroes," he says with air quotes. U.S. Agent says, "We can add him to the list, but we have a mission to focus on first." Ghost asks, "And what is this mission?" Dallas says, "You're going to take down a criminal empire led by someone called the Power Broker." Songbird says, "We're taking down a crime boss? This is our first big mission, right?" Dallas says, "We believe you're more than prepared to handle the task." Bullseye says, "Are you? If you're coming with us, you can't expect us to keep you safe the whole time." Dallas says, "I'm ex-military, Mr. Poindexter, like you. I have the proper training and then some." U.S. Agent says, "I can attest to that. We served together in Afghanistan. She has a higher kill count than I do." Zemo says, "This Power Broker, are we allowed to kill him?" Dallas says, "It is an option, but we'd prefer to take him in alive. He has secrets that could be useful to the United States. Beyond that, you're supposed to be superheroes. Heroes don't kill, especially not publicly." U.S. Agent says, "That goes for any samples too. This guy manufactures superhumans. It would be to our advantage to take any secrets he has with us." Dallas says, "Exactly. The Power Broker is an extremely valuable target." Zemo says, "As you say." He turns and stares out the window, but we can see that he's clenching his fist. We're going to cut to Madripoor. We see the Thunderbolts in an SUV being driven by Dallas. Songbird looks out the window. We hear the song "Play the Game" by Magnolia Grove play. And side note, this song is awesome, and it's by another band I'd like to highlight. This band is criminally underrated. My brother discovered them and showed them to me. And they have literally no views on YouTube. I think they're at 9 views on this particular song. And it's really great. I recommend going through and listening to this album when you're done with this video if you need something to listen to while you study or whatever. This album is really good. It's got a lot of variety on it. It's just, I saw the views on it and it was I just want to give them a shout out because it's really good stuff. With my, few subs, I figure I'll throw them their way. So go check them out. Anyway, the song plays as we see the SUV. Songbird looks out the window. She says, "I've never left the United States. The city is kind of beautiful. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Bullseye says, "Is there anything you have done? I guess the songbird grew up in a cage." The U.S. Agent says, "That's enough, Poindexter. We're supposed to be a team. I won't have anyone acting like a dick. That goes for all of you." They pull up to a house, and Dallas says, "This is the safe house. It's close to Power Broker's tower, a perfect base of operations." Zemo says, "It's too close to the building. If Power Broker is smart, he'll be watching these areas." Dallas says, "We're aware. That's a risk we'll have to take. We need a place close enough to the tower for the signal from planted bugs to reach." Songbird says, "You planted bugs?" Dallas says, "Not yet. Let's get settled in the safe house, then I'll explain the plan." We see the Thunderbolts in the house. After a few moments and some shots or whatever, they gathered around as Dallas explains the plan. She says, "Our current plan is infiltration. One of us will have to pose as a would-be client for the Power Broker. Today, they will make first contact. This will serve 2 purposes. First, it will allow us to plant a bug and gain valuable information on the power broker's activities. 2, it'll function as a distraction for the power broker and her guards. Songbird says, a distraction from what? Dallas says, for Mrs. Starr to infiltrate into the higher levels of the tower. Using her power, she should be able to extract any information they have without being caught. That is, if she's up for the task. Ghost says, I can do it. Dallas says, perfect. The name of the game will be stealth. We don't want you to be seen. Learn as much as you can and escape. John Walker says, me and Zemo are too high profile to be the distractions. There's a chance the power broker may recognize us. It has to be either Poindexter or Gold. Bullseye says, I'll do it. Zemo says, will you be able to convince them you want to do business? Bullseye says, shit, I actually want superpowers. I'll be convincing enough. Dallas kind of laughs and says, well, he convinced me. Good enough. John Walker nods and says, okay, we have a plan. Poindexter, take these. He hands him a set of bugs, little listening devices with sticky pads on the bottom. He says, just try to plant a bug and make sure you distract the power broker for as long as possible. Talk to him, chat him up, ask about the different powers they can offer. Whatever you can to distract him. We need enough time for Ghost to slip in. Ghost says, I won't need long. Once I'm through the door, they won't be able to stop me from infiltrating further. Bullseye says, don't worry about it. I know how to stall. We're going to cut to the power broker's tower. We see Bullseye walk in. As soon as he steps through the building, a blonde woman approaches him. She shakes his hand and says, welcome, Mr. Poindexter. Please, take a seat. Bullseye's eyes are filled with surprise. He immediately goes on guard. The woman notices and says, relax. I took the liberty of running a background check on you as soon as you entered the building. It's just a precaution I take with all clientele, just to make sure we don't get any rats. You have quite the reputation, Mr. Poindexter, and a very long rap sheet. There can be no doubts as to your loyalties. The power broker will see you soon. That is why you're here, correct? Bullseye nods his head. Yeah, that's why I'm here. He takes a seat and we see him plant a bug underneath his chair, very slyly. We're going to cut to the lower basement of the tower. We're going to see Ghost sneak by some guards by traveling through walls. She phases into an elevator, then clicks the up arrow. We see Bullseye. The blonde woman comes back and fetches him. He's brought into a nice office. The power broker sits behind a nice desk and a golden chair. He wears the same odd mask with the butterfly imprint we saw before. His assistant stands by his side. The power broker begins to speak Indonesian, which is, by the way, the language that the people in Madripoor speak, because it is in Indonesia. The power broker's assistant, the blonde woman, says, the power broker welcomes you, Mr. Poindexter, and asks what your business is. Bullseye says, what? Does he not want to speak to me directly? The assistant says, the power broker does not speak English very well. I will act as a translator. I hope this will not be an inconvenience. From here on out, whenever I say the power broker's dialogue, just know it's coming through the assistant as she translates for him. Power broker says, I would guess you want to become a superhuman. Why else would you come to the power broker? Bullseye says, that's the idea. I got a couple things I could do with superpower. Power broker says, most men do. Yes, we'll make something work. How long will you be in Madripoor? Bullseye says, as long as it takes. The power broker says, tomorrow I will walk you through the available packages. I promise our product does not disappoint. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that. If you found me, you must have seen my product in action. Bullseye realizes that the meeting is going to end quicker than he hoped. Too quickly. He quickly reaches for something to keep the conversation going. He says, yeah, a couple of guys calling themselves the Wrecking Crew told me about you. Had tattoos of butterflies on their hands. I asked about it, and you came up. I've got to ask, why the butterfly? Power broker says, I have a thing for insects. I find them fascinating. You see, the butterfly is perhaps the most beautiful of them all. Bright colors, gorgeous wings. Yet it starts as a measly caterpillar. Once it undergoes metamorphosis, it becomes something better, something impressive. I sell metamorphosis for men. I make them something better. To me, the butterfly seemed fitting. Could there be a better analogy for what we do? I look forward to doing business with you, Mr. Poindexter. Yeah, Bullseye says. So do I. Should I just meet here tomorrow? Power broker laughs and says, oh no. My associates will find you. Have a good day, Mr. Poindexter. Our meeting is concluded. Bullseye gets up and leaves the room. We see Bullseye leave the tower as he's escorted by a guard. We hover in the door for a moment and then see Power Broker's assistant leave the room. She picks up a cell phone and makes a call. She says, The power broker needs you, and then hangs up the phone and slides it back into her pocket. She waits there for only a few moments when we see Speed Demon appear in a burst of speed. It's the same kid we saw from the opening of the movie getting his powers. She says, "There's a man about to leave this building. The power broker wants you to follow him back. If you see anything suspicious, eliminate everybody involved." Speed Demon says, "As you say." He zooms off, and we're going to follow him as he speeds through the tower onto the street. We're going to begin to hear the song "I Ran" by A Flock of Seagulls play. Seems fitting. He quickly spots Bullseye getting into the car. He follows the car easily. The camera follows behind Speed Demon as he speeds around the neon city, past all the crime-ridden streets and the strange shops. The world moves by him in mild slow motion. People still move, but not nearly as quickly as before. Sort of imagine, like the Quicksilver guy in X-Men, but this guy is much slower than him. People could still hit this guy, It's closer to Quicksilver in Age of Ultron speed, which would make sense. The car reaches the safe house. It lets Bullseye and Dallas reordain out. They walk into the safe house. Speed Demon positions himself beneath a window and listens. U.S. agent says, "How'd it go?" Bullseye says, "He knows my real name, but I don't think he suspected a thing. It went perfectly. I'm pretty sure ghosts slipped by unnoticed." Dallas asks, "And what'd you see inside?" The conversation continues, but we don't hear. Speed Demon puts his head in his hands. He begins to talk to himself. "Maybe I can just scare them off. No, that's stupid. She'd know. Maybe I can finally just run away." He realizes that's a dumb train of thought and says, No, I'm not ready yet. Oh, I've got to kill them. All right." The song "I Ran" picks back up. Speed Demon stands and shakes his arms as if he's getting ready. He speeds into the room, blowing through the door. We see Zemo turn in slow motion, reacting to the door opening. Speed Demon punches him in the face. We see Zemo start to crumple. Bullseye pulls out a knife and throws it in slow motion. Speed Demon runs forward, dodging the knife. He goes right for Bullseye. He's about to punch him when one of Songbird's barriers appears. Speed Demon skids around it, going to the backside that hasn't formed yet. He crumples Bullseye with a punch to the gut. He runs forward towards U.S. Agent. He throws a punch at U.S. Agent, but he manages to get his shield up in time to block. Speed Demon sees it's like Captain America's shield. He stops in the middle of the room and makes a timeout gesture. He says in English, Whoa, timeout." Bullseye throws another knife from where he's laying on the floor. Speed Demon catches it out of the air. "Dude, timeout. Are you guys superheroes?" The Thunderbolts that are still conscious look at each other awkwardly. Songbird says, "Yeah, we are." Speed Demon says, "Really? Oh, that's awesome. I don't have to kill you. Wait, are you guys here to take down the power broker?" Bullseye says, "That depends. Who the hell are you?" He says, I'm Speed Demon. I'll take that silence as a yes to my question. I could totally help you guys bring him down." U.S. Agent says, "You want to help us?" Speed Demon says, "Oh, of course. I've always wanted to be a superhero. You guys let me join you and I'll help you take down this whole operation." Dallas says, "You know how to do that?" Speed Demon says, "Big time. I've been working for him for 6 years. I can tell you your plan to get to him by requesting powers isn't going to work. He's too careful. You're going to have to go on the offensive. Attack him with force." U.S. Agent says, "If you really work for the power broker, why do you want to help us?" Speed Demon says, "The power broker, well, he's a bad dude. Like, real bad. I've seen him do some messed up stuff. The powers he's given out are dangerous. I would know." He shows the tattoo of a butterfly on his hand. "It's only a matter of time before he gives powers to someone who's too dangerous. I don't want to see that happen." U.S. Agent says, "Your proposal is interesting. Could you give us a moment to talk about it?" Speed Demon says, "Oh yeah, of course. Big decision. I get it. I'll go pick up some food. You guys like noodles?" Ugh, who am I kidding? Of course you do. Superheroes. So cool. He vanishes out of the room in a burst of speed, and Songbird breaks out laughing. They all turn to look at her, and she says, "I'm sorry. It was kind of funny." Dallas says, "Well, that funny guy just blew our cover with the power broker. He's going to tell everything." We see Zemo getting up off the floor and wiping his mouth free of blood. He says, "The kid packs a punch, and I'm not sure he's lying. I think he's telling us the truth. His motives are understandable." Dallas says, "You didn't strike me as the gullible type, Zemo. This is clearly a trap set by the power broker. How does he know about us already?" U.S. Agent says, "I agree with Zemo. I think he's being genuine. I've dealt with a lot of liars in my time, and I don't think he's one of them. Kid was too stupid and earnest." What do you think, Poindexter? You were in the FBI. You should have some expertise in this. Bullseye lounges in a chair in the back of the room. He rubs his stomach where he was punched. "I think it's too late to do anything one way or the other. That guy was on his way to kicking our asses. I guess you should hope Ghost finds what she's looking for. or that the kid is genuine. We're going to cut to the Power Broker's tower. We see Ghost phase into a lab. They have samples of bone propped into a variety of tanks and displays. Some are in unnatural shapes like claws. Ghost quietly moves forward until she finds a computer. She starts to head for it when we hear a voice. A scientist says, "Who are you?" Ghost looks over at the man. He's young, maybe 30. He stands on the other side of a counter from her. He looks over at a panic button on the wall. He goes for it. Ghost phases through the counter and stabs him with her sword. We see him fall to the floor in a pool of blood. Ghost stares at the body for a moment. She turns to head back to the computer when she sees a mirage of herself. It vibrates like she does when she's phasing. The Phantom says, "I thought you left this behind." Ghost says, "Shut up." The Phantom says, "You're just a killer. You are no better than a common murderer." Ghost says, "I said shut up." She sticks her sword through the Phantom. It vanishes. She shakes her head clear, then logs onto a computer. She uses the dead scientist's ID she picks up off his body and is able to access the internal files. They're all named after insects. We see projects named Scorpion, Orb Weaver, Dragonfly, Black Widow, Rhinoceros Beetle, Antlion, and lastly Tarantula. She clicks on the file labeled Scorpion, and we see schematics for the Scorpion suit from the Spider-Man comic books. She backs out and clicks on Orb Weaver. We see schematics for some sort of helmet. It flashes words like reactive combat capabilities, heightened reflexes. Ghost looks up from the computer and checks the room to make sure everything's still okay. There's no one around and she hasn't been spotted yet. She backs away from the previous file and clicks on Rhinoceros Beetle. It's labeled Failure. We see photographs of a soda bottle and a gel container. Text below it says, "Blood sample received from bottle yielded inconclusive results after analyzation and formulation. Human test subjects concluded as failures." She looks confused and backs out, trying to select Black Widow. Suddenly, she's logged out of the system. Text pops up that says, "Access is revoked." Ghost looks up. Men are beginning to surround the lab. They're coming in through the glass doors. Ghost crouches and phases through the floor. She lands on the floor below. Her Phantom is waiting for her. "You're better off dead," it says. "You already lost your mind, and now you're losing your soul." Ghost walks right through the mirage and it dissipates. It reappears in front of her. "You got seen. You used to be better at this." Ghost just says, "Why won't you leave me alone?" The Phantom says, "I'm you, so I guess look inward." Ghost notices a refrigerator containing vials of serum. She snags one, then runs through the window, phasing through it. She phases through the wall of the adjacent building and lands on the floor. Two people inside the office building look at her with confusion. She crouches down and phases through the floor until she's on the ground level. She exits the building and slips into the crowd of people outside. We're going to cut back to the safe room. We're going to hear a knock at the door. U.S. agent opens it and Speed Demon blasts in. He's carrying bags of food. "This is from an awesome little place on the other side of town. You guys are going to love it," he says. U.S. agent says, "Thanks." Speed Demon says, "So, what'd you decide? I wasn't going to ask, but you guys were taking too long to tell me." Songbird says, "You just walked in." And Speed Demon says, "And?" U.S. agent says, "Look, Mr. Speed Demon." U.S. agent says, "Speed Demon, we'll let you join us. We're going to put our trust in you. You wanted to be a superhero? Then welcome to the Thunderbolts." Bullseye sarcastically claps in the back of the room. Speed Demon says, "Okay, that's awesome. Superhero. Awesome. You guys eat and I'll tell you everything I know." Which is a lot, by the way. I've been doing this for a long time. We see Ghost slip through the wall behind Speed Demon. She slides her sword up to his neck. Speed Demon holds his hands up. "Whoa!" U.S. agent says, "Relax, Ghost." Ghost says, "He's one of Power Broker's. I saw him in the tower." Songbird says, "We know. He's offering to help us." Ghost grunts and pulls her sword away from Speed Demon's neck. "Now that everyone's calm, let's eat. And then we got a lot to talk about. Let's try not to kill each other." And that's where I'm going to end part one. So this is mostly just the setup, the first act, getting used to our characters, what their mission is. Things are going to really pop off in the second act, and then really, really pop off in the third act. So I'll go ahead and go into the outro now. I hope you all enjoyed. Looks like we're going to finally make it through a video without a dog interruption. Okay. He literally timed that. This animal was not in this room before I started. You proud of yourself? You ruined every video! You ruined every video! Oh my god, stepped on my balls. Oh, it wasn't ruined enough, huh? Alright, like and subscribe to never see a dog interruption again. If you're looking for something else to watch while you wait for the next Thunderbolts, I got Suicide Squad here, with a shit ton of episodes of that if you've not seen them. And I've got Deadlands here, and there's a couple of episodes of that if you haven't watched it yet. Alright, thanks for watching. Goodbye, y'all.